Okay, hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be showing you a trap that's just absolutely critical. You have to know this trap if you ever want to become a stronger player. So if you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and click subscribe and click on that notification icon. So this particular trick or trap is called the fork trick. Now without knowing this trick, you're just not going to make a whole lot of progress as a player. So the main part of this fork trick is to take advantage of people that don't develop properly. So let's say we have bishop to c4, knight f6. If white were to play knight c3 here, black can take advantage of the fact that white didn't play one of the three respected moves in this position, which after knight f6, which is the two knights defense, is either d3, d4, or knight g5. These are kind of the three moves that are respected as being playable. If white plays one of those three moves, white is okay. But if white continues with the move knight c3, black can get away with this cool, what we call the fork trick. Black can temporarily sacrifice a whole piece. He can play knight takes e4, and after the knight recaptures, we can play d5. And then after we regain our piece, black has a better position because he controls the center of the board. So the fork trick can work actually for both sides, and it can work in a number of different scenarios. And it's also important to know when the fork trick doesn't work or when it sort of only partially works. So it doesn't always work exactly as designed. Now in this particular exact position, the fork trick always works. So keep this position in mind in the two knights defense, and if you have an opportunity to play your fork trick here, go ahead and play it. But it is also possible for white to engineer a fork trick. If, for example, white were to play something like, say, knight c3 in the four knights defense, a very popular move for a long time was a move a3. This was a move back when I was in my early 20s. This was an SOS. This was a secret of opening surprises move. And one of the cool things about it was you could play the fork trick. You could play bishop c5, and then you could play the fork trick as white with the move a3 thrown in. This is actually an improved fork trick. So then after knight takes e5, you have d4 and then bishop d6. And because you have a3 thrown in, you can actually improve on the fork trick. You can play f4 and you can play another fork, and you can take over the whole middle of the board, and this is just supposed to be totally awesome. Not only are you getting your piece back, but you're taking over the center, and this is supposed to be really good. So those are two examples of when the fork trick works. There's also situations where the fork trick works, but it sort of only partially works. So this is kind of interesting. So you could play, for example, in the Vienna. Anytime where the queen can come to h5, the fork trick isn't always 100% perfect. So like if knight takes e4, the fork trick does work here. If knight takes e4, knight takes e4, d5, the fork trick actually still works, but white has this alternative option. He can play queen h5 and not take your knight, and he can hit f7 twice, and he can hit the e5 pawn, and then this leads to the exceedingly complicated so-called Frankenstein Dracula line where white plays for mate with knight b5, and black actually ends up having to sacrifice an exchange to survive. But of course this is not a clean fork trick. Black actually ends up with the center of the board, and we end up in a position that's just too complex for words actually. But that's another scenario where the fork trick, it's not quite so clean. And then of course there's scenarios where the fork trick simply it looks like it should work, but it doesn't. So here's a great example of that. Knight f3, knight f6, bishop c4, knight f6, knight takes g5 is considered a main line. So a good question is, why can't we just play knight takes e4 here? Right? This makes total logical sense. If knight takes e4 and then I play knight takes e4, we have a fork trick again. Does this work here? And of course the answer is no, and it's not just a no, it's a really big no. So now we would play something like bishop f7, king e7, d3, and you can't even play knight takes g5 because bishop takes g5 is going to be completely winning. So this would be this wouldn't just not work, this would be really, really bad for black. Black would actually be much, much worse in this position. So the fork trick is a really critical idea to know. You can use it in a number of situations, but you need to know when you can use the fork trick and when the fork trick doesn't work as intended. So the fork trick doesn't always work as intended. Usually the remedy that people pick when the fork trick doesn't work as intended is they're not necessarily just going to be capturing that knight immediately. One more situation where the fork trick doesn't work as intended, because I see this a lot. So I see this happen a lot where we play something like bishop to c4, and I actually, somebody told me one time you almost have to have this happen to you a few times before you learn as a young player that this doesn't work. So let's say we play something like d3 and then they play bishop to c5. You might think, hey, I can play the fork trick with white. And boy, does this happen a lot, especially to young players. And I was told once, like I said, this you almost have to fall for this before you learn it as a younger player when you're coming up. But of course, this doesn't work at all, because after knight takes e5, they can take, and then when you play d4, oh no, they can take your bishop. And now the fork trick doesn't work, because the end result of all this is that you're down a whole piece. So that's the fork trick, that's how it works, and that's when it doesn't. So that's a very important skill that you need to learn if you ever want to get past the beginner level. I hope you learned something new about chess. I hope that you can use these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.